Standing up in McKinney. This is According to Callus. It is episode 747. I'm going to title it The Center Will Hold. Before we get there, before I explain what I mean and spend some time talking about this, let me remind you, the show is not going away. It's just kind of changing form, slowing down a bit, but we're going to keep doing what we're doing here. So I need your help. I need you to like, share, subscribe, follow. Join me on your social media of choice. You can follow me on your podcatcher of choice as well, whether it's an Amazon or a Apple or a Google or a, I'm sure Microsoft's got something out there, Stitcher, Podbean, and finally Spotify. And you can still find the show over at YouTube for now. I'm not going to hold my breath. And, you know, I have a page and a group over at Facebook. I drop in at MeWe. I'm a pro at Gab. Not sure what that means, but that's what I am. And, yeah, that's right. And I still have that Twitter account that I haven't figured out what to do with. I'm sorry, X account. All right. Okay. Let's do this. The center will hold. Okay, so I try my level best to remain objective and fair. I generally wear my religious beliefs, if you will, on my sleeve, and I'm generally quite open about what I believe politically. But I also know there is a significant disconnect by what my religious beliefs are and what my political preferences are and the reality that we live in. Nothing would be gained by me running around and calling other people names because they disagree with me. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do chuckle when I hear the term rhino used on a good number of people because I think it's probably an accurate explanation of what's playing on there. I myself am familiar with the term liar. In the early days, I might have been called that, which is libertarian impersonating a Republican. Sorry. You'll excuse me if I laugh at that. Now, if you wanted to go back and talk about the history of the parties and where we've been, where we're going, that's all well and good. I think Brian McClanahan has encapsulated this best. The Republican Party started out as a reformist party, or a progressive party, if you will, in the 50s. And by the 1960s, the Democrats decided to go them one better and just become a flat-out crazy progressive. I would even go so far as to say nationalist, socialist. Oh, I can't put those two together. Sorry. Well, let's just say a socialist, progressive, atheistic party, right? And that's come to fruition, particularly in the last, say dozen years. And that has allowed the Republican Party to basically keep creeping further to what would be called the progressive left. And then there's a group of people that have no better choice but to stay within the Republican Party and try and pull them back right. So I find it humorous when somebody that's way left of center calls somebody else who is, let's just say, center right or slightly right wing, a right wing extremist or a Christian far right. I don't think they know what those terms mean, but I know they're really wonderful epithets and that they can almost uniformly discredit them. So I'm reading an excerpt from an article that is courtesy of Texas Monthly that was actually shared by somebody here in my town who, to be fair, would be one of those people that screams and calls anybody a far-right extremist that's to the right of him, which is probably 70% of the population. But that being said, so they talk about the Seven Mountains Mandate. Okay, now they call this a Christian nationalist framework. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I'm certain that some Christian nationalists out there probably have folded that in. But let me read to you what this is, and then you tell me what you think about this. They want to take over the 7 spheres of society: government, media, business, arts, family, religion, and education. Okay. So let's think about this for a second. The leftists run the media. The leftists run the arts. The leftists have all but destroyed family. The leftists more or less run education. The leftists have done a number on, quote, religion, and they more or less have, we'll call it a strong plurality within government. So the leftists have already done this. They beat the Christian nationalists to this, right? So this is an instance where they're looking to retake it. Whether you want to look at it as a reconquista or you want to look at it as a crusade. And just so we're clear, I'm using those terms on purpose because all of Spain, or almost all of Spain, was conquered by Muslim Moors from North Africa. And it took 800 years for the Christian Spaniards to repel and remove them. They reconquered their land that was run over by Muslims. Now, there's all sorts of historians that will tell you that it was actually a great time and it was a good thing and all this other stuff. That may be true, but it was a group of people that were conquered from outside and then they fought to take it back. So when we're looking at the United States, I think it's very appropriate. The United States was largely run, developed, built by, we'll call them Christians and Christian-affiliated people. That's not so much the case anymore when you look at the arts, the media, religion, education, and quite frankly, government. The only thing that the left hasn't done a good job at is replacing family. I mean, they've got the made-up families. They've got the imposter families. But as far as a true nuclear family, they haven't figured out a way to do that. And there's some reasons for that, but I'm not going to go into that because that's really not the context that I want to get into. And while we're talking about it, it should be told and should be known that the majority of what is now the Middle East was Christianized, and I will say peacefully Christianized, by conversion well before the advent of Islam. And Islam conquered it. They took it over. They subjugated. Now, maybe you don't like those terms. Maybe you think they're offensive or aggressive. Again, if you look at it objectively, you have basically 2 choices: to submit or die. That's what they do historically. Now, whether that's still the case, I don't know. I think you can make an argument one way or the other. They certainly have challenges getting along with their neighbors, but that's, everybody has that issue. So when the Christians, the Europeans, if you will, went to go retake the Holy Land, if you will, Jerusalem, those various areas, they did so. They were not super successful, mostly because they weren't there from to start with. And the people that they, quote, liberated weren't all that excited about their liberation. At least what you could say is when the Muslims came in, they were largely people that looked like them and sounded like them, or much closer to that. When you've got a bunch of Europeans showing up, they kind of stick out like a sore thumb. I mean, this is just me pontificating without having any great giant study in this. But it seems to me that it's quite obvious why they were not long-term successful, which is even funnier when you consider that Constantinople, which was the last standing vestige of the Eastern Roman Empire, or Byzantium, or whatever you want to call it, or even if you want to say the heir to the Greco-Roman heritage, when they finally collapsed, it was made up by multiple nationalities that spoke Greek and were at least nominally Christian. And again, when you give people that are conquered a choice, convert it or die, pretty easy to see how that's going to play out. Which, interestingly enough, when you look at Spain after they were successful in their Reconquista, they did go to another step, which is universally deplored by historians, but they looked for the fake converts, and they wanted to kick them out. And some people died, and it was kind of messy, and, I don't think anybody's quote-unquote proud of it, but after 800 years, that's kind of a mild response, in my opinion. If you doubt me, look at what's going on in England right now. London stand, if you will. The destruction of most of modern Europe, because quite frankly, they rejected that which made them strong, which I guess some would lump in as Christian nationalism. I don't know that that's fair or accurate, but we're talking about people that resort to calling names because they don't want to have an intelligent conversation. So again, when you are, let's say at the 75th percentile left, and anybody that's not as far left of you is a reactionary, right-wing, fascist, Christian nationalist, whatever name you want to throw out there, yeah, it kind of gets confusing now, doesn't it? Now, to be fair, we have the right. We that are Christians, we that are politically active, we're not all that much better because, like I said, we do use the term rhino, though, again, at times it is appropriate in my humble opinion. But we also dismiss people as being leftist or progressive. Now, most of the time we wait until they actually prove it out. Most of the time we don't go on social media and blast them and call them names and be derogatory towards them. We just say it amongst ourselves. So there's a little bit of difference there. But again, not all my peeps have the same kind of discipline that I try and show. and look, it's a messy world. Nobody's perfect, myself included. So I want to look for people that are credible who make critiques that can give me something to work with. And people that are, let's just say, chemically imbalanced, throwing out names and accusations when they have shown themselves not to be capable of having a, let's say, cordial conversation with somebody that they disagree with, are probably not the best people to look for that definition or for any kind of conversation. Okay? This follows along the line of the idea that if you destroy the truth, then people won't know. Well, that's true and it's false. There is objective truth, right? It is possible to find out what truth is. There are things that are, I believe the term's immutable. It's obvious and it can be proven. Maybe you don't understand how gravity works. I know I certainly don't. But the fact is it's there and it works. And it's not likely to go away, barring any cataclysmic event, anytime soon. Likewise, there's tides which happen because of gravity or perhaps magnetism, depending on who you want to talk to. But again, I don't have to understand how it works to understand that it's true and it happens and it's observable, just like the moon phases, right? These are the kinds of things where it's immutable truth. It's not because I think so or because I believe it's the case. It's truth. So when you get in the situation where somebody can look you straight in the eye and say, well, my child is whatever sex they think they are, I'm sorry. They don't know what truth is. Or if they do, they've clearly forgotten how it works. And I feel bad because I know in my heart that a lot of those people that are going through this kind of a situation, aside from whatever philosophical or religious overtones might play into this, they're hurting. They're trying to figure it out. But going along with this and celebrating it is not doing them any favors. But again, for me saying that, I would be now branded whatever the latest rhetorical slash and burn job is. And to say that because I don't believe homosexuality is a good idea, or I say it's sinful behavior, means that I hate people is ludicrous. But that's the kind of response you get. I've often talked to people and I said, look, I don't have to agree with what you're doing. And we're taught that sinful behavior is sinful behavior, and all sinful behavior is seen the same by God the Father, though it may have different applications and way that plays out here on earth right now. But I'm not looking to go stone anybody. I'm not looking to throw anybody in prison for doing something like that. I'm going to have a little grace, have a conversation, treat them with general respect. And I don't know why this is so hard. And I think I can do it because I still have a grasp of what the truth is. And I don't think this is unique to me. I think the vast majority of the general public, if they don't know exactly what the truth is, they're at least familiar with the idea, or they vaguely remember it from their childhood. So this is something that is not entirely lost. We've been under a massive propaganda assault, and I think that's a fair way to put it, for years, trying to distort and rewrite what truth is. But I'm confident that the center will hold. The center knows what's what. And even if they're not 100% certain, they're going to go with what's familiar, what feels right. They're going to use their gut, their intuition, right? They're going to ultimately go towards the right thing. And I suspect that parties, certain parties, not political parties, but certain parties know this. There's things that can be felt, right? There's that vibe, if you will. Now, I'm not going to get into the metaphysical argument. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but you can tell. You can generally tell when you're around people if they're with you or they're against you. And I think there's a general realization that, at least here in McKinney, people are ready for something different. They want a breath of fresh air. And the sad thing is, under other circumstances, I would think that a normal turnover, right? You got somebody that turns out, they hang up their hat, they say, okay, I've done my time, thank you so much. I'm going to sail off in the sunset, or I'm going to go find another place to serve. They wouldn't spend all their time, money, and effort trying to ensure that their chosen replacement gets in. I mean, because after all, this is a nonpartisan race, right? I mean, after all, there's no politics here. Oh, that's right. Because the guy that's running, that was the unapproved candidate by the local club, he was a Republican. And Republicans generally like him. And Republicans are generally hopeful that, hey, maybe we can bring some, even-handed sanity back to things. That we can have conversations that don't, resort to name-calling and abusive behavior. I'm just speculating here. And what's humorous to me is we hear the airport's a done deal, but yet it's absolutely imperative that we don't let somebody in that's not all for the airport. Okay, so is it a done deal or not? We hear that, we must be in lockstep. We have a majority. We know what we're doing, yet we can't allow for a dissident voice to be part. We can't allow for any outside influence. No. We must be in lockstep. Do not deviate from the groupthink here, folks. That's not allowed. So I made a post that, I guess, I'm trying to remember if it was over the weekend. There was a mailer sent out basically illustrating the groupthink, right? The lockstep leadership of the club. These are the people, and they think that this is the person that must lead us next. Now I'm going to use a phrase that is going to be familiar to a certain group of people. It's not that we don't want rules. We just don't want rulers. So when I look at that, I don't mind being led. In fact, if there's a good leader, I will willingly follow that person and happily take advantage of their expertise or knowledge or their, guidance, whatever. I'm perfectly content to be in the passenger seat in that situation. But all too often, that's not what we get. All too often, we're forced to give up our choices. So when I consider this, I've had more than one person bring this to my attention. Why do you think the outgoing mayor is so vested in who his replacement is? I said, well, I assume that he wants to put his stamp. I'm assuming that he wants to ensure that his vision continues. The person said, are you sure that's all it is? Could there be something else going on there? Could there be something that there's concern about it coming to light? Now, I've often said openly, I'm not the biggest fan of the outgoing mayor, but I don't have anything against him personally. And I've always conceded that he's quite smart, very media savvy, and that's why he was such a challenge to counter or, quite frankly, beat. But I can't believe that he would be foolish enough to do something that was illegal. Not when the odds of getting caught are so high. So I don't know that I agree with that. I think it's a fair question. I don't know that I'm willing to go down that rabbit hole either. But it does highlight the odd situation here. I mean, as it stands right now, there's 6 people that are generally in lockstep. Now that I say that, I want to be fair, right? So I know Michael Jones, city council member. I think he's a good guy. I think he's got his own opinions. I think he also wants to be part of the team, so he's going to, go with the team most of the time. And I don't fault him for that because, quite frankly, that's how party politics work. Even though this is not partisan and there's no party involved, you understand. I would say the same about Patrick Cloutier. I think I've had some really good conversations with Patrick. I think he's a very smart guy. I think he legitimately has different ways of looking at things, and both he and Michael have occasionally bucked the system. But I think more often than not, he's going to go along with what the plan is. Mostly because the plan generally is not terrible. I mean, let's be fair. Let's be honest. Most of the stuff that's going on in the city of McKinney is not destructive. I mean, maybe we don't like it. Maybe there's concerns about how some of it's happening or playing out. But by and large, the club has a vested interest of staying in control. They have a vested interest of making money. And they can only do that if they do things that have a net positive outcome. Now, to be fair, a net positive outcome for them is probably entirely different than it is for us. But again, this is an old yarn. The city fathers generally are always going to get something for themselves. But as long as they're looking out for the general public, as long as they're looking after their people, I choose to turn a blind eye to it. Now it leaves one other person that I have met. I don't know him, but I've met, and I have what I would call mutual friends or mutually friendly people, right? People that are friends of his or friendly with him that are friendly with me. And they speak quite highly of the guy. And while he and I probably are on different sides of many things, it is clear to me that he's an independent thinker and that he's a numbers guy, and he needs to see it play out. And even though he approaches it from a different way than I might, or somebody right of center might, he's going to stand his ground. So that means there's a possible 3 people that have shown some independence. But once again, I would speculate that they're also very happy to follow the leader. In other words, if you've got a good leader, they're likely to defer to what that leader wants to do, as any good second should. If you trust your leader and you think your leader is generally going to do the right things, you're going to have your leader's back. I can speak to this firsthand. Sometimes it's a struggle. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes there's, cheers, and sometimes there are jeers. So as far as that goes, again, not a concern. But you still have a functional majority, because most of the time those three guys are going to go along with what the other three people want to do. So because you have a mayor that should be the leader of this team, that should drive policy, should drive, preferences across the finish line, the only concern you must have is that this deviation is going to cause problems. What problems? What are you getting at here, Callis? That's a good question. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, and I don't want to make any accusations, because certainly they would be unfounded. And quite frankly, there's no evidence to suggest anything bad's going on. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's been some what I would call shady deals. And by shady, I just mean, maybe they shaded a little edge on that line there, and maybe. But I'm sure it was all legal, because these folks are careful. They don't get to where they're at without being careful. So you got to give them credit and a little respect there. That being said, elected officials have been known to cross the line in the past. And not just one party or the other. They all do it, right? And when I say they all, obviously not every single one of them. But it's a generalization, folks. Deal with it. So, again, I don't expect that I'm going to change any minds, right? If you're going to support Scott Sanford, you're going to support Scott Sanford regardless. And quite frankly, I'm right there with you. If you're going to support Bill Cox, I imagine you're going to support Bill Cox no matter what I say. That's okay too. But for you undecided people, for you people that aren't 100% on board one way or the other, I want you to consider this. Do you believe long-term groupthink is what's best? I mean, for those of you that have worked in a corporate environment, you know how that plays out, right? Somebody throws an idea out, one or two people latch on, and then the whole group jumps on because they don't want to be left out. They don't want to be looking bad. They don't want to be targeted because they disagreed. And again, I'm not casting dispersions here. I'm just observing human nature. The other way that we could consider this is there is a way to find common ground. I mean, we've got 3 people that I'm at least familiar with on the city council. The other 3 I don't know. Okay, so I can't really comment on them one way or the other. I'm not dismissing them or disparaging them. I don't know them. And of the other 3, I have met and spent a little bit of time with 2 of the 3. And the third, I'm basing that observation on other people's feedback. So if you got a guy that's elected, that is a leader, that has a little bit different idea, that wants to push a different way of thinking about things, if it's bad, right? If it's legitimately bad, there's a really good chance that 5 of those 6 are going to immediately say, no, we don't want to do that. That's crazy. I mean, and you only need 4 to shut it down. So that means you're going to have to find common ground, right? There's not going to be any drastic changes here, folks. This is one vote that would be at least nominally right of center on 90% of the issues. And when we talk about it's all about potholes and, taking care of the parks, well, if that's the case, then it really shouldn't matter that the person belongs to one political party or another, right? Because we're only concerned about those things. It shouldn't make a difference. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say the parties don't matter, but then they do. When you use somebody's party explicitly to vote against them, when you're telling us all along that the parties don't matter, I think maybe you're just a little bit hypocritical, is what I think. And to go so far as to smear the guy and, claim he's guilty merely by association, it's not doing anybody any favors. I mean, I'm certain that there are plenty of Democrats out there that are embarrassed by the behavior of more than one member of the Democrat Party. And I would no longer, or I should say this, I would no more hold them accountable for something that a liberal, leftist, crazy, progressive, whatever from, I don't know, Minnesota or New Jersey would do. Then I think they ought to be holding the average Republican in McKinney accountable for, I don't know, pick somebody. What is it? Major or MTJ? I don't know, or MTG. I mean, think what you want about her, but I'm not responsible for what she does. And neither is anybody else that I'm aware of. Now, some of us are probably secretly laughing when she does some of the things that she does and chuckling, but I'm pretty sure that most of us are like, yeah, okay, we're not going to do that. So I'm going to take another couple minutes here and just explore this idea of common ground. See, as a Liberty Republican, I often find myself defending what I would call old school Democrat principles. Unfortunately, the Democrat Party has mostly jettisoned them by now. I would even go so far as to say some moderate Republicans hold to this, and from time to time I find myself in league with them as well. I have libertarian friends. We're often on the same chapter, maybe not the same page, but the same chapter. Because as a Liberty Republican, I look up to people like Ron Paul, Rand Paul, Thomas Massey. I mean, even Justin Amash, right? I think they're in the right spot most of the time. In fact, probably the vast majority of the time. Maybe I would do it a little bit differently if I was there, sure. But if you're going to call me names, if you're going to insinuate because the leader of our party is a mouthy guy from New York, and therefore we're all crazy, well, okay, that's fine. As long as you're okay being Bernie Sanders. Or if you prefer AOC. I mean, there are people that nobody is excited in Texas, I should say. Nobody's excited that these people represent our parties, but they do. And when I say nobody, I just mean there's lots of people that are disappointed or wish we could have better. Now, you can say what you want about the Donald. On the whole, I've been pretty pleased. But again, going to the notion of common ground, we ought to be looking at the things that we can agree on. We ought to be looking at the things that are agreeable to both sides. Things that move things forward. So when we're going to talk about fixing potholes, that's fine. And there's a certain value to having nice streets, clean streets, safe streets, nice trees on the side of streets. But rather than making it a political football, when we deal with people that are homeless or destitute or have other issues, rather than making that a political wedge issue, why don't we look at a reasonable solution or suggestions that might alleviate the problem without putting other people out? Might we consider there's other ways to approach things on the concept that there's common ground here? We can agree on some things. Unfortunately, that's just not possible. There's so much animosity, so much angst, so much trouble that can be thrown about that unfortunately it just doesn't seem to be possible. Now, I live in the city of McKinney. I live in Collin County. I believe the city of McKinney is populated by a bunch of people that think they made it to what I would call a very nice place, aka the Promised Land. They think their fight is over, that generally things are positive and going in the right direction. And I'd say by and large that is the case. Notwithstanding questionable decisions by leadership from time to time. So what does that mean for us? That means we need to focus on the common ground. We need to focus on the things that we actually agree about. 55% of the people that bother to show up to vote identify themselves as Republicans in Collin County. I'd say a roughly 55% number of people that bother to show up and vote in McKinney would also identify as Republicans. Now, some of them might be reluctant Republicans, or some of them might just be anti-Democrat. I don't really know And in that mix is what I would refer to as the club. Now, the club, at least on the surface, is on my side. They're going to have an R after their name. But I think that they really spend most of their time looking at how can they improve things for themselves. Now, if the city does well because of the things that they've done, great, more power to them. But if they're hurting the city, if they're doing things that are detrimental long term, I'm less excited about that. Now, fortunately, I don't believe that's the case. Fortunately, I believe the vast majority of what they're doing, they actually think is beneficial for the city. And if they get a little something out of it, so much the better for them, right? And again, that's kind of how it is with the city fathers. And because we're in McKinney, Collin County, Texas, and you have to have an R after your name in order to win, for now, that's the way it's going to be for the foreseeable future. So we got to find a way to work with these folks. We got to find a way to, I don't want to even use the word compromise, because that's all the right does. They compromise everything away. They stand for nothing at this point, right? The conservatives have failed to conserve anything. But we got to work on the common ground. I mean, I live in a city. I'm going to be honest. I got a guy who lives across the street from me. He's supporting the other guy. You know what? I've met him once or twice, probably in passing in the last couple of years. I don't dislike the guy. I don't give him any thought at all. But I don't hate on the guy. No animosity. I would expect he feels the same about me. But is this really the way we want to function? That we're going to call each other names and be rude and, see each other as the enemy? I mean, most of us just want a nice city to live in. We want a well-run county. We want the state to, quite frankly, leave us alone. But this is what we're stuck with. Every couple of years, we get firebombs thrown at each side, mostly coming from the left to the right, because that's what they got to do to win. And I get it. I'm not offended by it. Disappointed, but not offended. But we can do better. We need to do better. And as for the folks that are trying so hard to join the club, I mean, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. I'm sure I know a few of those people that are in the club. I don't dislike them. I think they generally mean well. I think they want what's best. I get it. I just really wish that they would take their thumb off the scale and, I don't know, let the people be heard. But maybe that's wishful thinking. One last thing, a final thought, if you will. This concept of the common ground. Now, I was there for the mayoral debate. I've been at several debates over the last few years, and I think they're good insofar as people are willing to talk about their differences, right? They're willing to talk about what distinguishes them from the other person. But what I found is a lot of times they spend so much time talking about how they're the same or they're similar. Maybe that's a hint. Maybe it would be useful if we brought some people in that come from different backgrounds or different ideals and sit down and say, well, what can we agree on? What could we work on together? What are some goals that we think would be positive for the city of McKinney, for Collin County, or even for Texas for that matter? I think that would be a worthwhile experiment. If any of you out there in the listening land of podcast world live in McKinney or Collin County and you have any interest at all in this, do me a solid. Give me a call, drop me a private message, let me know, and we'll work on something. Maybe we can get something done this summer. I think it'd be kind of fun. We'll see what happens. And with that, this has been According to Callison. Yes, I've run late, so I will see you on the other side.
TexianPride.com is the destination for Texans who want to show off their love for Texas. We don't settle for mediocre. Our shirts are made from 100% high-quality athletic cotton. They're cool, comfortable, and designed to fit and flatter any body type. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Visit TexianPride.com for your next stylish Texas tee.